Hey folks, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of EMS today on TacMed TV. Hey folks, welcome to TacMed TV. My name is Steve, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of EMS. Recently I put out a video about where I thought the future of EMS is going. And once that came out, Jim Williams and I were talking about it, and he made the comment about how most people in EMS nowadays don't realize our history, don't know where we came from. And I thought, you know, he's right. And that prompted me to go ahead and make this video. And I actually think I'm going to do a series on the history of EMS, and this is going to be part one of that series. Don't know how many parts are going to be to it, but I'm just going to roll with it and see what comes out. So today we're going to talk about the EMS White Paper. This is the paper that started everything for EMS. It created, the concept of EMS. It was published in 1966 by the National Academy of Sciences. The actual name of the paper is Accidental Death and Disability, the Neglected Disease of Modern Society. So with that being said, we're just going to refer to it as the White Paper. So that way it's easier for me to say it and refer to it. So anyway, we had this paper come out, and one of the things that came out about it in the paper while they were doing the research for this is that in 1965 they had 52 million accidental injuries in the country. All right, 107 of those were killed, 10 million were temporarily injured, 400,000 were permanently disabled or permanently impaired, had a permanent injury result from that. And that was at a cost of $18 billion. Okay, and that's 1965 dollars. That's not 2019 dollars. Okay, so you could see that it's a big, even then it was a big cost issue to keep dealing with that. So they recognized that, hey, we've got to do something about this. So they came out with the White Paper, and one of the big things it talked about in there was accident prevention. That was one of the big things. It brought together not just members of the healthcare community, but it also brought together industrialists. You know, it called on them to make factories safer for their workers. It got public health involved to help make regulation to make the world that we live in a safer place. Engineers to design safer machinery, to design safer vehicles for people to ride around in. General public got involved, you know, educators got involved. So this was one of the things that helped push that move to make our general environment a safer one for everybody. Now, a couple of things I'm going to hit on in this video. Now keep in mind, I will put a link to the White Paper in the description box below. I want you guys to go read it for yourselves. It's only about 38 pages, 37 pages, something like that. It's not going to take you a long time to read it, but it's obviously too much for me to read on camera. So I'm just going to hit some high points of where when I read it, I thought, boom, that's the start of EMS right there. So one of the things I noticed in there in the emergency first aid medical care section when they were talking about that was their recommendation that there be a national curriculum for first aid. Now keep in mind, I know they're calling it first aid, but at that time, what else were you going to call it? There was no such thing as EMTs or paramedics in 1966. So that term hadn't even been used yet. So you couldn't just say, well, we're going to have an EMT, blah, 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 blah. Well, what does that even mean? Well, they didn't have anything. So it's first aid. So this is a more advanced first aid than what just the basic first aid is. But it set the recommendation for a national curriculum. And that right there is the birth of the EMT, all right, and the paramedic. Setting forth a standardized curriculum that the people in Kentucky and the people in California are going to take the same class, they're going to learn the same information, they're going to learn the same skills. So that's where this got started. There's your birth of our career. if you will. And another interesting thing that came out of that section was they recommended that 5th grade and above be taught basic first aid, and so that every American would eventually have basic first aid training. I'm completely down with that. That's something that's not done. That I think that kind of fell through the wayside since 1965. But I'm sure there are some places that are teaching first aid and CPR to high school students and so on and so forth. I know when I was in high school, it would have been nice to have that as part of the health class. You know, CPR and first aid and health class, and get it done, you know, and have that knowledge to move forward with. So I just thought that was something interesting. Still to this day, we're still trying to get information out to the public like CPR and stop the bleed and basic first aid. So they knew even then that it was something that needed to be done, and we're still making that fight to this day to get that information out to the masses. So I thought that was pretty cool. The ambulance service recommendations, we got to the section on ambulance services, and definitely read that because it's pretty interesting. But the recommendations that came out of there, one of the big ones was they recommended to implement standards for ambulance construction and design. Because keep in mind, up in this point in 1966, 1965, in this era, they're using hearses, all right? The funeral homes are taking care of this. Why? Well, because that's a vehicle that has a stretcher in it, and you can put somebody on that stretcher and take them to the hospital. Now, usually there was no medical care going on. They went to an accident scene or whatever, put that patient on the stretcher, and they got in the driver's seat and they drove them to the hospital. There wasn't really any medical care going on. So this set a standard for the vehicle that we were going to use. There was going to be a specific standard and a specific design to be able to be an ambulance. And that's why we have today, we have a standard for a Star of Life ambulance. If you look on the inside, one of the cabinets on the box, you're going to see that sticker, and that certifies that vehicle as a Star of Life ambulance. That's where that came from, all right, is the white paper. The other thing it set up is the equipment and supplies. Recommended a standardization of equipment and supplies to be put on the ambulances. It also set up what were the qualifications going to be for someone to be an ambulance attendant. What were those qualifications going to be? What were they going to have to do to become an ambulance attendant? And it also set up it also recommended that there needs to be supervision of ambulance personnel, and that's the start of your physician medical director right there. All right, so that's the beginning right there. That statement right there, where you set up the standards for the ambulance construction, the equipment that's going to be on the ambulance, and the qualifications for the person to work on the ambulance. That right there is the birth of EMS. That is the beginning of it. It's 1966. The paper, though, went on to cover other things like the hospital ER, what types of equipment they were going to have, what levels of training they were going to have. It even went into communications, your radio systems, how are they going to be used, so on and so forth. So, like I said, I want you guys to go read this and learn about the history of where we started, okay? To me, it's incumbent upon us to do that because we need to know where we've been to know where we're going to go. All right, it's that simple. So anyway, I hope you got a little bit out of this. I know this was kind of quick for me to cover something like this, but I wanted to try to keep it short and sweet and to the point, and I tried to do that for you guys. But anyway, go read the report for yourself, and then let me know what you think about it, and we'll get a conversation going on that. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to move from this topic. I've got one other thing I want to tell you about. If you notice, there's also another link in the description box, and it's the TacMed TV store. Please go check that out. There's a few things in there that are available for purchase. Anything that you purchase there helps me maintain what we're doing here on the channel. It helps me keep rolling videos out and so on and so forth. So go in there, show your support, grab you a t-shirt or grab you some stickers, and know that if you do, it's very much appreciated. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So anyway, moving forward, let's see, we'll put the subscription button over here over the left shoulder. I'll sprinkle some other videos around. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You'll be notified of any new videos coming out. And with that being said, my name is Steve with TacMed TV, telling you guys to stay safe.